The story I've heard since I got into advertising is of budgets being trimmed everywhere. I feel like that's the perennial story is, everyone's looking to tighten their budgets. How can we do that? AI. Let's use AI. It was social media before this. I feel like when I first got into it, everyone was talking about, oh, social media, we don't have to pay for advertising anymore. Well, you still got to pay for people's time. There's still got to be a professional, someone who's good at this, who knows what they're doing, helming the ship. You may not be paying for a full-on traditional media spend anymore. You still have to pay for someone who knows what they're doing to use the tool. I think that's, at the end of the day, that's what it currently is. It's a tool. It can be used for good or evil. It can be wielded with skill or with a ham fist.
Howdy, and welcome to the show. Cooper's Code focuses on legal issues and notable practitioners, distilling wisdom so we all achieve the best results for our clients. I'm Miles Cooper, and I'm really looking forward to sharing part 3 of our interview with marketing creative consultant Zach Morvant. As we talk about content and information, do you have any beliefs about us existing in a visual world, building asset libraries, content libraries, and what does that mean? And maybe some examples.
So I think, it's clear video has been the thing for a while now. At least having some good images. So because people we don't just read websites. Websites have evolved since their inception of being mostly text only things where the JPEG took forever to load because you were on the slow dial up back in the day. I was a child of the early internet. So I recall this all too well. Now we've got streaming video and everything and autoplay this and that, and it's almost overwhelming and it's table stakes. If you look at most personal injury sites, everyone's pulled from the same horrible stock photo libraries, and it just all looks so scammy and bad. When we talk about content, people define content in different ways. Some people, when they think content, they think just of the words that exist on a website. Some people think of anything that exists on a website, and both are valid definitions. But the point is, to what you said earlier, we live in a visual world. And people want some pictures. People want some images to go with their words, whether it's a multimedia type of experience, like people consuming a podcast either with video or without. There's that to consider. Having that human connection means knowing who you're working with and being able to see what they look like. Before I even reach out to this person, I kind of want to know what they look like. That's just how most people operate. We're humans. We're wired that way. So the face on the billboard, make sure it's a good picture. Make sure the lighting's good. Make sure on your website that you have, some high quality photos of your team. It's going to help build trust. Nothing makes people feel your brand is disingenuous or cheap or potentially scammy, like bad images or a crap website. That's table stakes these days. So making sure you have an asset library that has current brand approved pictures. And when I say brand approved, I basically mean, do you like these pictures enough to have them be displayed on all of your communications? That is a brand approved image, basically, in a nutshell. Is it when we get more, when we level up a bit and we get to setting our own brand standards for our company or our product or service, we have a certain style guide that we tend to follow. Our pictures look like this. When you see an Apple ad or a Nike ad, there is a certain photographic style that gets used in that. And that's next level. That's way beyond what I think a lot of law firms are going to be doing. But the basic tenets are the same, right? You have a look, you have a feel, you have a style. This is your brand identity. It extrapolates beyond the logo mark and the colors and the type, and it goes into photography and the other ways you show up in the world.
I want to comment on your table stakes piece. And again, just kind of an easy takeaway for solo or small firm folks. And that is, a lot of people are in that environment are doing relationship marketing, meaning they're promoting themselves a bit on LinkedIn, talking about something that they're doing. And just my personal experience of scrolling through the LinkedIn scroll over the last few months, there is a fantastic lawyer out of Los Angeles. He is a top flight trial lawyer. He puts up regular, very high quality content in terms of things to do. It's all text. And so you have to actually actively click it open, because otherwise you scroll past it, because there are no images or video that are associated with it. And so if somebody were wanting to get more attention in that relationship marketing in, say, LinkedIn, would you say it's as easy as putting in a photo or a video or some other small piece to illustrate the concept that they're trying to draw attention to?
I think the annoying answer, as always, is it depends.
Okay.
So there, long form text can work really well with a certain audience. And if you have a dearth of photography and imagery to draw upon, another way around that is how would you make this into a slide presentation would be a way to think about it. LinkedIn does offer that format. So you could take that long form text thing, break it down into like what it would look like in a PowerPoint or a Google Slides sort of situation. So maybe it's bulleted out. Maybe you just have some key big quotes, like one on each slide sort of thing. But finding a way to like add visual interest that's not just photography or video is totally possible and totally encouraged. What's nice about that kind of approach too is then you can add a little bit of branding to your slide. So if you have like a certain color that you're using a lot, maybe that's the background of the slide, or maybe that's the color of the type. But again, making sure it's readable. So like making sure the contrast of the colors is correct. There are tools you can use, like accessibility tools that you can use online. So folks who are low vision or who have some kind of color blindness, it can like double check these things for you to make sure that it's readable. So when I say readable, that's what I mean. And also the size of it too, making sure it's not too tiny. A lot of people look at stuff on phones these days as opposed to the desktop. So making sure your type size is big enough to be readable on mobile too. Like every digital asset you make should be mobile first these days. And when I say mobile first, I mean, look at it on your phone before you look at it on your desktop. And if it's not working on your phone, if it's hard to read and you have to like pinch and zoom and adjust stuff to look at it, guess what? You're going to lose people. So making sure that point of accessibility, that you're designing assets with that in mind. To answer your question in a long roundabout way, long form text can be successful, especially with certain audiences. If he's talking to other lawyers love to read. Hey,
True.
one thing I love about working with lawyers is I can write long form stuff and I know people will read it if it's good. But I think the attention span of the average lawyers is much higher than the average consumer out there. So again, it depends on your audience, depends on your strategy. And even if you're just working with text, there are ways to, and not photography, there original photography or good stock photography. There is good stock photography out there. Don't get me wrong. Again, this goes back to taste level. You can use stock photography. It's cheaper than original photography. And you still need to know what a good photo looks like and what a bad photo looks like. But you can brand stuff, use some basic graphic elements to promote your brand and make text-only content more engaging.
I want to go back to what you were talking about with having high quality content, because there's another trend I've noticed, and I'd love your thoughts on it. I am seeing a lot of advertising that looks intentionally inexpensive. And here's what I mean by that. Hey, it's Miles. I'm here outside, and it's time for me to clean my air conditioner. And it looks like I've recorded the thing off my phone. And it's actually a big company that seems to have gone out of their way to look like the casual, real TikTok, almost a faux genuineness because of the amateur level of the shooting. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on the marketing that I'm seeing a lot of in that regard.
I think there are a couple things going on here. I mean, one, this kind of like UGC or user-generated content style of advertising isn't really new. More people have phones and better quality cameras to make more of it now. It's definitely a cost-effective way to go about things. And it has to make sense for your brand and to your audience, like everything else. Like it tends to have a look and feel that can be authentic if done correctly. And I'm sure you've also seen ads that are very much the person holding their phone, taking a selfie video that look very canned and also like kind of cringy. So again, it comes down to style. This is why you pay people who are professionals usually to do this kind of stuff because it's almost like a handwritten type. If you've heard that used before, like where people will like kind of do a hand drawn sort of typeface instead of typing one out. There is a way to do it that is really great, or there are ways to do it that look really great, and there are ways it can easily go off the rails and not be so great. I know I sound a bit vague right now, and it's that whole like that pornography argument. Like I know it when I see it. And unfortunately, that is kind of the way like these often highly subjective creative things are. Some of them can succeed and some of them can fail. The format is just it's one vehicle to get your message out. And I think kind of the purposefully low tech or user generated thing can be funny. It can't like if done like way in one direction. I think like the Pro Bar, if you're familiar with them, they're like
No.
they're kind of like a Cliff Bar style product, but they did some Facebook advertising that's like it's like the graphic design intern kind of did it, and it looks like it shows like the grid of like Adobe Illustrator and like some lines being drawn with the mouse, like, and it looks crappy, but it's kind of funny because it's so crappy. And then I've also seen like some stuff that's like the person like shooting their own like testimonial that's like clearly like this is a paid influencer, not a real person talking about this thing. So again, it's trusting the people to do the job, getting the right people that align with your expectation for your brand, your taste level to execute and create the messages that you want out in the world that you think will resonate with your audience and that resonate with you. And I think one way you can do that, you can like make great stuff is by finding the right people that align with what you like. That's out there in the wide world of marketing. Like think about advertising and messaging, marketing messages that you've seen, not specifically in your industry, even like just out there in the world. Like what's resonated with you? What has spoken to you? What worked about those for you? The style that you like, the voice that you want to have, the face that you want your company to show the world. And conversely, thinking about stuff you hated and stuff that like you don't want to be associated with and stuff that made you like, ugh, gave you the ick, as the kids might say. What turned you off? And then looking at the portfolios of creative people you're going to be engaging with and seeing the kind of work they're doing. Does it line up with your expectations and what you want? Is it completely the other direction? Can a middle ground be found? These are things you learn in conversation, but a creative person tends to live and die by their portfolio. That's the work that they loved, that they will show the world and try to get a job with. So that's a good kind of litmus test. Knowing what you like, and then also knowing what the people you potentially working with are capable of.
That's very wise, and I think a nice summary of how to approach this and how to take it on. If you're enjoying what we're doing here with Cooper's Code, please extend our reach by giving us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and consider sharing an episode with a friend. Additionally, we want to know who you want to hear on the show. Have an interview suggestion? Email us at podcast@coopers.law. One thing we haven't touched on, and it feels like given the prevalence of AI in all industries and in terms of having impact, do you find that there's a place for AI in the work that you're doing?
I think very much so. I think we're at an interesting time with AI too. The cycles are happening so fast. I'm going to say first, yes, there absolutely are uses for AI. And for me, working with my own practice, what I find AI is most useful for is just rapid prototyping and proof of concepts. So if I have an idea for an advertisement, but I don't have a design resource to, mock up what it could look like, I'll go into like Midjourney or something like that and feed it some prompts to say, hey, I want an image that looks like this and this kind of style that shows this thing happening. And it'll spit me out a bunch of permutations and I'll tweak them a little bit to get it more or less kind of what I'm looking for. And pair that with like the copy and the strategy behind the idea and show that to a client or prospective client. Say, this is kind of the look and feel I'm thinking of doing. What do you think? Because it's hard to visualize stuff, It's easy for me to write up some lines and tell you about them and like what I have in mind, but I'm not a visual artist. I can do some stick figure drawings that look convincing and can tell a story. But I'm a word dude. I write stuff, theater of the mind and all that. So being able to use a tool like Midjourney or whatever to come up with some images to back up my stuff. There's your art, there's your copy. What do you think? Should we pursue this further? It's usually enough for someone to chew on and say, yeah, that looks cool. Let's do that. Let's make that real. Or no, it's not quite there. Let's try a different direction. Um, where else it's useful to me is it's a good junior copywriter is what I would say. A lot of these large language models. Um, spitting out, getting them to help me with some thought starters or some potential headline ideas. I couldn't tell you when I've like actually used one of theirs. Like, I think the writing is okay, but when your language model basically has scraped the internet, which what did most people write for, like a seventh grade reading level or something? That's what you're going to get back. When you give stuff to these language models, they're going to spit back out at you the stuff they regurgitated from what everyone else wrote online, and the majority of that stuff isn't that good. It's serviceable, and with editing, it can be good. I don't think we're at a point where these models are outright replacing good writers. Certainly not good designers or art directors, but they provide me with a good starting point. They help me to sort of more rapidly iterate. If I get stuck, I can like ask it a quick question, or give it a line that I'm fumbling with, and then it'll help me kind of break out of the box that I'm in. Sometimes you just, you're going down the rabbit hole of writing a thing, and you feel your brain's kind of exhausted. You're not sure where to go yet. And sometimes you just need another person in the room to like bounce an idea off of. And that's kind of what agency models were based off of, was having a bunch of creative people that could like sit around and, hey, I'm stuck on this. What do you think about that? Well, I don't have one of those, but I do have access to the internet, so I can, ask it for some help here and there. And I also think there's a lot of overuse of AI right now, and we're seeing a backlash um, in real time, which is interesting.
Can you elaborate on what you mean by that?
When these generative AI models were first coming out, which was really like what, a year or change ago, people were like doing a lot of like experimentation with them, and it was like new and novel at the time. And now there's like an increased, at least from what I see online, there's a lot of increased sensitivity to stuff that looks obviously AI generated. I think the most recent example is the Olympics are going on right now. And I don't know if you've seen any of the Olympics coverage, but there was an ad from Google for Google Gemini, which is their generative AI product. And the concept is cute. It's, like, hey Google, like my daughter loves this Olympian. Help her write a letter to this Olympian. But the way the ad comes off just feels like so kind of tone deaf and out of touch. And the public backlash about it is like overall negative. Like this ad is garbage. This is like, this isn't helping a child's creativity. It's stunting it, this sort of thing. So that's the most recent example I could see of like, some negative sentiment toward a mass use of generative AI. Like, here's a company advertising its own generative AI product and getting dragged on social media for it. And then on a more local level, had a client I was doing some social media work for, and I used an image that was pretty much, you could pretty obviously tell it was AI generated. And there was a comment like saying like, stop posting AI garbage.
Wow.
It did get a lot of likes. And it also got a comment like that. And I was like, okay, there's a little bit of that going on. And being tapped into a lot of like channels for professional creatives, just seeing a lot of trepidation about, job security over these types of AI models. I think like a lot of technology, there's obviously a huge transition period. The biggest negative I'm seeing is that I mentioned, it's a pretty good junior copywriter. A concern I have is that does this, negatively impact folks who are just getting started in like a copywriting career? Will they have the same opportunities? Probably not. I think I see a lot of those more entry level writing roles being kind of farmed out to folks who can just plug in a prompt. And there's not a whole lot of necessarily creativity going on. There's just a lot of they can feed some prompts into a machine and get some acceptable writing back. Is it great writing? Is it memorable? Is it groundbreaking? I don't think so yet. Maybe someday, but we're not quite there yet.
If those junior level jobs are eliminated, don't we run the risk of, one generation down the road being in a situation where we don't have writers like you? Because you have to start somewhere.
You got to start somewhere, and that's a very good question. And I guess we'll see. The story I've heard since I got into advertising is of budgets being trimmed everywhere. I feel like that's the perennial story. Everyone's looking to tighten their budgets. How can we do that? AI. Let's use AI. It was social media before this. I feel like when I first got into it, everyone was talking about, social media. We don't have to pay for advertising anymore. Well, you still got to pay for people's time. There's still got to be a professional, someone who's good at this, who knows what they're doing, helming the ship. You may not be paying for a full-on traditional media spend anymore. You still have to pay for someone who knows what they're doing to use the tool. I think that's, at the end of the day, that's what it currently is. It's a tool. It can be used for good or evil. It can be wielded with skill or with a ham fist.
As we talk about various skills, I want to bring it back to the personal and writing. And I feel that I would be remiss if I did not cover how your writing has impacted not just your career, but also your personal life. And I think it's a great way of just kind of illustrating the level at which your writing gets attention. Back in the day, there was something called Craigslist. I think it might still be out there, but and there used to be the best of Craigslist, where people would nominate the 0.01% of the things that were put out there in terms of content for being creative, and that's a launch pad for how you ended up as a best of Craigslist writer or nominee.
Oh wow! So this is a good story. This was late 2011. It was in the middle of my owning my own agency days. I was the single guy in the agency. Both my business partners were both in committed relationships. One married, one common law married, and I was the bachelor. I was the single guy. So as kind of a joke, I wrote this ad for Craigslist called "Wanted Holiday Girlfriend." And the whole premise of it is that, the holidays suck when you're single. All your friends are going around doing coupley things. It's really annoying to the point that you want to vomit. So the proposal is, be my girlfriend for the holidays, but only for the holidays. So we'll hang out, we'll do coupley things. We could meet each other's parents and pretend like it's a longer term thing if you want, whatever. But come New Year's, it's over. We have all the fun for a month and then it's over. And I must have struck a chord, because this thing blew up beyond what I thought it would be. I think this was back in the day when on Facebook you could see how many shares something had. It got shared something like 500,000 times. I got interviewed by the local CBS affiliate, but I was pretty terrified of the prospect of being well known. So I dressed up as Santa Claus for the interview and wore this like crappy beard and hat and everything. Dr. Phil, one of their producers, found my mom's phone number and called her house trying to get me on the show. I did not want to do that at all. I thought I was going to be crucified. Anyway, I ended up, one of the people who responded to this ad is now my wife. And my business partner joked that I was going to end up with a wife out of this. And I was like, whatever, Michael, you're full of shit. That's not going to happen. Well, Michael was right. Michael, if you're listening to this, you were 100% correct. I did find the love of my life. That's the most successful thing I've ever written yet.
Well, it certainly speaks to your talent in the writing department.
Well, thank you.
As we kind of wind up, are there other things that you feel it's important that we touch on as it relates to marketing and law firms and branding and creative?
Yeah, I'll just drop some notes because creative is more my specialty.
Yeah.
I'll just say I'll say a quote that what I've heard one of my wife's colleagues say. He's a creative director for a big company. She works in creative project management. But he likes to just say it's advertising, people, which I love that phrase. But just when it comes to creative, don't take everything too literally. I know this is difficult because a lot of lawyers tend to be very logical, very rational. But we got to remember, like, people are responding to emotional, gut level stuff when they're making a decision about, whether they're buying toothpaste, a sports car, or deciding who their lawyer is going to be. It's going to come down to emotion more than it's going to come down to rationality. So let me give an example. Think different. The old Apple tagline is not technically grammatically correct, but if we had that LE at the end, if the LY at the end, it said think differently, it just wouldn't have the same power, right? Same thing with just do it. The like if that had been like workshopped by a committee, like where would Nike be today? So part of like working with creative people is trusting them to do their jobs. Having respect for the profession. It's easy to infantilize marketing and creativity. Everyone gets exposed to marketing messages these days, so everyone feels like they should have an opinion about what should be made for your company. And the fact of the matter is, not everyone has the taste level and the ability to decide what the right thing is for your marketing, for your company, for your brand. But you as the client have to have that confidence and know what you want and know what resonates with you. It's a bit of a dance. It's a partnership when you work with someone who's in marketing and in creative, or really in anything. But I'm only going to speak to what I know. Another thing I would say is, don't let the facts get in the way of a perfectly good story. At the end of the day, we're storytelling. Obviously, when you're in court and you're on the record, it's a different thing. You got to have those facts in line. And, when it comes to marketing messages, we want to be memorable. We want to be valuable. We want people to take one thing away from an interaction with us, and figuring out what that thing is probably one of the most important things you can do. There's a saying out there, fast, cheap, good, pick two. It's as true a maxim now as ever. So you generally get what you pay for when it comes to creative stuff, and services in general, I've found. So just, having that, keeping that in mind. But again, aligning it with your business goals, with your strategy, with your brand identity, with your target audience.
So which two do I pick? It's some form of Buddhist cone there it's the marketing Buddhist cone, I guess.
The marketing Buddhist cone. I like that.
Fast, cheap, good. Yeah.
I like that.
As we wait for Matthew McConaughey to develop his rom-com for your Craigslist post, I really want to thank you for taking the time to sit and share some of your wisdom with all of us.
It was a pleasure. Thank you for having me. And I look forward to being back on the other side of the camera at the next session.
See you next week.
All right. Sounds good.
And thank you for listening today. Please email us at podcast@coopers.law with questions, comments, feedback, and suggestions for who you feel we should have on the show. Like what you heard? Share us with a colleague and leave us a 5-star review on your podcast platform of choice. To all of you doing justice out there, happy hunting.